Whilst very few video game stages and sections are loved or hated without exception, it's just as rare to find something that completely divides opinion. Stages that to some players are not only necessary additions but worthy of being in the conversation for the best in the game, meanwhile others come out of them feeling let down and swearing to never play them again. I'm Si for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 divisive video game levels fans can't agree on. Number 10. Cortana, Halo 3. On a first playthrough, Halo 3's Cortana mission is a combination of enrapturing story and exciting gameplay. It, more than any other, may well be the most pivotal moment in the original Halo trilogy. It sees through Master Chief's goal of reuniting with AI buddy Cortana even as the universe draws close to an end around them. As the player gets closer to her, they repeatedly see flashes of Cortana's decaying mind. The Covenant ship High Charity has been completely overtaken by the parasitic flood, and waves of enemies come at the Chief thick and fast. Thankfully, whilst the level is not short on alien scum, it also doesn't skimp on power weapons like flamethrowers and energy swords to cleave through them. The real divide with the stage comes on repeated playthroughs, however. Now that you've seen the full extent of the story, being slowed down by constant interruptions from a distraught AI is pretty tiresome to say the least. Moreover, without the narrative to distract you, it becomes apparent that the growth-covered bulkheads of the ship make for a confusing and disorientating map. It's not universally hated like the library, but does anyone really love flood-focused levels? Number 9. Sunny Meadows Mental Institution, Phasmophobia. Kinetic Games' cooperative paranormal investigator sim Phasmophobia covers a range of haunted abodes from simple house calls to large-scale jobs. Groups of players rock up with their spirit-detecting kits and flush out what haunts them. The latter of these include Brownstone High School, which has 58 individual rooms to explore, and Sunny Meadows Mental Institution, which tops it still with 69. Nice. Naturally, there are many players who find Sunny Meadows to be unsurprisingly far too big, and going from room to room 69 odd times to find the right one that sets off your various ghost-busting equipment is a slog. Even with the maximum 4 players, mods notwithstanding, it can take a long time. But for some, this is an exciting prospect, as it allows them to really spread out. After all, looking for ghosts in an abandoned asylum is a whole lot scarier when you're with a friend 1 minute and then moments later wind up lost in the dark by yourself. Other, more common maps get quite cramped and therefore lose a lot of their atmosphere. Naturally, it's all down to taste. Phasmophobia might be one of very few games where getting lost can be a good thing or a terrible thing, depending on what you're looking to get out of it. Number 8. Bonus levels, Super Mario Sunshine. When it comes to Mario's hundreds of video game releases, there are few titles quite as divisive as Super Mario Sunshine. Some love its warm, sunny aesthetic and unique gameplay approach, and others find it to be too lacking in content to compete with other 3D Mario titles. Spread throughout Isle Delfino are mysterious portals that take the player to some kind of wacky pocket dimension where physics take a back seat to the fuzzy feelings of good 3D platforming. For every single one, Mario is disarmed of his flood companion and has to make it through the challenge using only his various jumps and the player's wits and skill. They break up Sunshine's runtime and provide a throwback to Mario 64's more pure gameplay, whilst memorably being set to a toe-tapping a cappella version of the Plumber's theme song. The problem is, beyond being some of the hardest challenges in the game, is that by taking the flood away, they feel completely out of place. Mario Sunshine's gameplay from start to finish is built around using the device to take down enemies, clean up gunk, and even move around the world using the hover pack or water-propelled super jumps. For some, taking it away makes these areas stick out for all the wrong reasons. Number 7. Anything with the Batmobile, Batman Arkham Knight. Across the Arkham series, we got to experience a good number of classic DC Universe heroes and villains, as well as many of Bat's best gadgets. Yet one thing was demonstrably missing: the Cape Crusader's wheels. One of the most popular vehicles in all of fiction, and the games didn't have the Batmobile. That was one thing that Arkham Knight sought to fix. Finally, players could take control of a brand new Batmobile that was a cross between classic designs and the Tumbler from the Dark Knight film series. It made getting around Gotham completely different from the other games, and it's hard to deny that it just felt cool. It was like a missing part of the puzzle had finally arrived. That being said, many players' love of the vehicle dropped off pretty quickly when the game seemed to use it as a crutch. It was a constant resolution maker, and controlling a tank for the majority of a Batman game felt sort of wrong. Moreover, the Batmobile sections robbed players of face-to-face showdowns with the likes of Deathstroke, when instead the game just asked them to nuke them with the Batmobile. In so doing, many fans thought Arkham Knight was a game less about the Dark Knight and more about the Dark Knight's ride. Number 6. Chapter 13, Final Fantasy XV. The core gameplay mechanic of Final Fantasy XV was what if Final Fantasy was a road trip with a bunch of monarchy bros, inviting players to drive around its open world in their flashy sports car and enjoy the camaraderie of its core cast. Which is why Chapter 13 is such a sticking point. Taking you out of the open world and into the longest dungeon of the game is one thing, but it's a rare moment of FF15 where you are forced to go solo. Looking at it positively, taking away Noct's party and weapons really hammers home the adversity of the situation. No longer able to rely on your friends, you must overcome this situation alone. It is designed to cause stress, fear and uncertainty in the player, even more so with certain story revelations that throw everything you know into doubt. However, it's simply not fun. It detours from the core enjoyment of the game far too much for far too long, asking players to backtrack, learn new stealth mechanics and rely entirely on an old ring that only seems to work 25% of the time. The negative response to this at launch actually prompted an update to smooth the section over, but even still it remains a chapter that divides player opinion. Number 5. Any Knuckles stage, Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure, for all of its faults, was bold. It featured 6 playable characters, all of which had tweaks to the gameplay to make them stand out. Sonic was the baseline around which other styles were crafted, such as Amy Rose being constantly chased through stages by an unstoppable robot, and Big the Cat chilling out with a little fishing. Knuckles the Echidna, Sonic's on and off friend and rival, spends the game searching for shards of the shattered Master Emerald in what is often described as one of the worst gameplay sections of the game, which is saying a lot considering the aforementioned fishing stages. Exploring small self-contained environments essentially becomes a hot and cold minigame of searching for 3 randomly placed MacGuffins. Arguably, it takes away the speed from a game traditionally all about it, but is that a bad thing? For some Sonic fans, this new gameplay slant is an interesting aside to other characters' more traditional modes that allows them to take a breather. Each stage does at least make use of Knuckles' abilities to glide, climb and dig. 6 characters in your first 3D outing is a big ask, and whilst Sonic Adventure doesn't excel 100% of the time, Knuckles' gem hunting is refreshing enough that it returned for the sequel. Unlike the fishing game, obviously. Number 4. Public Assembly, Resident Evil 5. By being the first game in the series to include cooperative play, Resident Evil 5 offered new experiences to players, but at the same time made a lot of the franchise's long-term audience turn away completely. Reaching the public assembly stage of the game is a make-or-break moment for many fans. The scenario presented is a more action-heavy tilt on the shack defense of the previous installment. Not only does it take place in the bright light of day, making it far less scary, but the game's co-op makes it a clear step up in excitement. Some players, especially those playing with a buddy, won't bat an eyelid and in fact may enjoy it as the true intro to what Resident Evil 5 is providing, a strong, well put together action game. However, with Resident Evil 4 already moving away from the horror of the franchise's roots, this was a big line in the sand for many fans. Sure, it could be tense in admittedly sparse moments, but RE5 had almost completely left the spookiness behind. Your reaction to this section might well reflect your feelings on the game in general and the direction the series took thereafter, which quite famously divided Resident Evil fans for years to come. Thanks, RE5. Number 3. Erdak, Doom Eternal. To set Doom Eternal apart from its predecessor, id Software took a look at their level design philosophies and added some fresh mechanics. Adding platforming into the mix to break up the fast-paced combat was a controversial choice. Erdak, late into the game in particular, asks for a lot of death-defying leaps and thus became the point where many gave up ripping and tearing demons and instead did away with their controllers. You could be having a great time blasting and blood-punching monsters and then suddenly the game asks you to cross a chasm. Many fans found themselves stumped by Doom Eternal's precision-based first-person perspective parkour. Hard jumps were not new to the series, but they were previously there to hide secrets. Now, players had to jump and dash between climbable surfaces to even progress through the story. However, whilst this ruined the game for some fans, others took to it with great joy. It not only felt like a cool throwback to the era that Doom first spawned from, but it added some much-needed variety to the game. As good as the combat was, and it was great, too much of a good thing can produce burnout, which for many was avoided by exploring Doom's environments in exciting new ways. With such a divide between fans on the mechanic, who knows if it returns for a theoretical threequel. Number 2. The Ironwood, God of War Ragnarök. Taking players away from Kratos in God of War Ragnarök was as inevitable as it was divisive. After resting firmly under the wing of his father throughout the first game, the sequel lets Atreus soar as the pair finally split up and the character gets to fly solo. However, Ironwood is a particularly sore spot for some. Just as the story is is picking up speed, players are whisked away into this subplot where Atreus hangs out with Agraboda and picks fruit for what feels like hours. There's just not a lot to do, which is a problem for a section as long as it is. How many times is Agraboda going to tell us we can go home and make us think the section is finally over when it isn't? On the other hand, it's perhaps the prettiest section of an altogether stunning title. Furthermore, it's here that the story grows deeper and wider, as Atreus' innate compassion allows us to experience things we wouldn't as Kratos. It's an important set piece that establishes Atreus as something close to a protagonist on equal footing, especially as it closes with one of the best boss fights in the game. Still, much like Halo 3's Cortana, this might be a section that really drags on repeat plays, unless you really love skipping rocks and riding yaks. Number 1. Great Bay Temple, Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. For many years, it seemed as though it was a unanimously held opinion that the worst Zelda dungeon was Ocarina of Time's dreaded Water Temple. Over time, though, opinion seems to have softened from "this is so bad I want to pull my own spine out" to "it's okay," which is a big glow up. However, the follow-up for sequel Majora's Mask has always been an opinion splitter. The Great Bay Temple sees Link journey underwater in his new Zora mask to complete a puzzle following pipes to change water flow. It allows players to fully embrace their new fishy form, enjoying the pleasant swimming controls and not so pleasant music. Whereas Nintendo are typically known for calming, beautiful underwater music, the Great Bay's soundtrack is notable for being a creeping, disconcerting theme that fits with the winding level design. For others, however, it's the theme song to Going Mad. Levels and flow weren't quite as tired a mechanic in 2000 as they are now, but Majora's Mask goes a long way to making some players never want to set foot in a water level ever again. The stage is confusing, badly explained by the game, and has a frustrating layout. This is all a recipe for disaster in a game that is all about doing things within very particular time constraints. No amount of rewinding time will undo this controversial dungeon choice. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below. Which of these levels do you love the most, and which of these levels do you hate the most? And of course, let us know of any others down in the comments below. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Si for WhatCulture, and have a good week.